Greetings and salutations. Welcome to a video about audio. Today I'm going to show you how to set anti-skate on your turntable. And it's super easy to do. And I'm going to explain what skating force is, why you need anti-skate, and the best way to set it. Hopefully this will cut through some of the misinformation and disinformation that I came across not too long ago when I was looking up an anti-skate question about my RT85 turntable. In the first 10 or 15 minutes that I was looking online, I came across so many people who obviously did not understand what skating force is and why it needs to be compensated and why you should set it a certain way. It is unbelievable how many people do not understand the physics of how a tone arm tracks a record. So we're going to cut through that right now. So we have a nice dual 618Q here, CS 618Q, and I have a record on the turntable. And what we're going to do is we'll put the tone arm here. You'll notice this is a straight tone arm, but when it gets out to the head shell, it's cocked this way. It turns. It does that because with a radial tone arm, which is what this is, it tracks a radial arc across the record. In order to minimize the distortion, you put a cocked head shell on it, which actually brings the stylus forward past the tangential. The tangential line would be from the spindle to the edge of the record. Records are cut that way, straight across. And you can get turntables that have linear tracking tone arms that will go straight across the record. The reason why they're uncommon is because they're complicated and they add problems of their own. This is a simple way to track a record, and with proper alignment, you can minimize the distortion to the point where it's just negligible and it really doesn't affect the sound. That comes at a price. Because this head shell is cocked this way, and it's actually ahead of tangential, the stylus in the groove is subjected to skating force, which is the fact that this head shell, because it's forward of tangential, wants to keep going on around the record. So it wants to pull it around. And of course it can't do that. So the head shell itself is constantly being pulled this way, which means that the stylus tracks with uneven pressure on the right and left walls of the groove. So the inner groove, or the left wall, is constantly being pushed against, while the right wall doesn't have enough tracking pressure. Anti-skate did not start showing up on turntables until cartridge manufacturers started building cartridges that would track at 2 grams or below. So early hi-fi microgroove turntables from the 50s, the LP came out in 48 and the 45 came out in 49, they don't have anti-skate on the arms because they had so much downward tracking force on the ceramic cartridges of the day that it would compensate for this skating force going across. Plus, alignment wasn't that big of a deal back then. But with cartridges that tracked lighter, more advanced stylus shapes, elliptical styli, and the exotic stylus shapes like Microline and Vandenhull, you really need to have a way to balance that pressure between the right and left groove wall. So that's what anti-skate does. To set anti-skate, according to the instructions that come with just about every turntable that I have ever seen, they say, set your tracking force, figure out what that is first. So let's say that you're tracking at 2 grams, and you have that right. Then you go and set the dial on the tone arm to 2 grams. That's all fine, well, and good, but you're assuming, sorry, I didn't mean to put my arm in there. I wanted to get something to show you guys. You're assuming that the turntable tone arm is calibrated properly, and usually anti-skate is handled with a spring. Springs are not known for being all that accurate as far as the amount of tension they're putting on things. But anti-skate is an approximate setting. It's not exact. It changes depending on how loud the modulation is in the groove. In other words, if you have more sound in the groove, the friction of the groove goes up. If it's a blank groove, it goes down. So you're trying to find a happy medium. So what we need to do is find that happy medium. How do we do that? First of all, we need to make sure our turntable is level. This is just the tiniest of the littlest level that you can think of here, but this is actually quite good. And you'll make sure that you have your turntable on a good solid surface and that it is level. That's first. Now once you do that, you set your tracking force properly, and you can use the calibrated tone arm or you can use a scale. It really doesn't matter, because the way I'm going to show you to set it, you could even have a situation where you didn't even know what the tracking force was, and then you're going to find the proper anti-skate to go with it. So now that you have your turntable level, grab a record like this one that has a long run-out groove. So just in case you can't see that, let me pick that up and show you. Now what you do with that is that you drop the tone arm close to the label and you watch the behavior of the tone arm. This side would do too on this record. There's another way to do that, and that is to use a blank record. I don't have a blank record, but I do have a CD. And a CD works nicely. The only thing to keep in mind is that you're going to destroy this CD when you do it, because the tip of that stylus will cut a groove in that CD. It'll scratch the hell out of it. And it's also going to do that on the dead wax between the run-out groove or a blank record. So just be aware of that as well. I have a couple of records that I've used repeatedly to do this, and I've noticed that if you look carefully, you can see all of the extra little scratches and grooves that I've put in doing this. So right now I have this tone arm set up to where there is no skating force at all. And take your CD here, and make sure it's pretty close to center on the record, and put the stylus right at the edge there. And I'm going to show you how quickly this moves toward the center. You see that? That is pure skating force. So there are actual idiots online who say, you don't need skating force. No, you need that. You're wearing your records funny. You're wearing your stylus funny. Don't do that. So what do? Well, for this particular cartridge, which is a Stanton 680, and it has a stylus on here that tracks at 2 1/4 gram, plus we need to add in for the brush, so we need a anti-skate of about 3 1/4 gram, which is an awful lot for a turntable. But this is just for this particular cartridge. If you don't have a brush on your cartridge, and most people don't these days, then you don't need to compensate for that. The Stanton cartridges, when you pick your tracking force, you're picking it for the stylus. So, like I said, 2 1/4 gram, you add 1 gram to the calibrated tracking force for the brush. So you set the whole thing for 3 1/4 gram, and so you would set the anti-skate for 3 1/4 grams as well. So what we're going to do is go ahead and turn this anti-skate almost to, at least to 3. And I'm just turning it around like that. So I have it about 3 right now, and I'm not looking at it because I'm way over here, but I kind of know where this is. It's on this particular turntable, anti-skate goes from 1 to 4, okay? So if I drop this, look at that. Did you see how it kind of stayed where in the middle there for a second, but then it just started moving toward the center? Let's do that again. That's just about perfect, boys and girls. Now, there's a couple of ways to look at this, and you'll hear it both ways online, and as far as I can tell, either way is pretty close to correct and will get you in the ballpark. When you are testing your anti-skate this far in to the record, where it's actually the most crucial, what you want to do is set it to where the tone arm hesitates and then slowly starts to move toward the center. That's harder to do on a record that has a run-out groove, because the runout groove will grab the stylus and pull it over. What you don't want is to have, like let's say you're using a blank record and you put the stylus here in the middle, right? And that just holds still. That's going to be a bit too much of anti-skate. So what we're looking for, especially this close to the center of the record here, is that this either holds still or just barely starts moving. I think we're just about right, and I didn't even look at the dial. I have no idea where it's set, but I can probably tell you, there you go. This is perfect. That's exact perfect anti-skate. So if I look at this, I'm going to tell you that's going to be right around 3 grams. All right. Some people will say to have it hold still. Others say that it should move slowly toward the middle. It's almost half dozen to one, 6 of the other, and it depends on what kind of music you play. If you play a lot of hip hop and you play a lot of loud rock and roll, you may want to have a little bit more anti-skate. So if it just sits, that's fine. If you play something like jazz, classical, where the modulation is sitting 30-40% most of the time, then you need a little less anti-skate. But either way, you're so close that it's going to be fine. So that's how you set up anti-skate on a turntable. It is really that simple. And this dual turntable is so well calibrated that I can tell you that anti-skate is pointing probably right about 3.25 gram right now. It's exactly where it should be for this particular setup. And as I said, to recap one more time, just to make absolutely sure that you understand, your tracking force is 2 grams. As an example, your cartridge may track at 1.8, or it might be 2.3 or whatever. But whatever it is, we're going to use 2 grams as our example. Set the tone arm to 2 grams on the anti-skate, pointed at the 2. And then with a record or a blank record or whatever, just start adding and subtracting until you get this result. It could be a whole number off on the dial. It could be either high or low. That's okay. Remember, we're only dealing with a spring. And the calibrations on mass-produced turntables, even ones that cost money, that you pay a lot of money for, are approximate. This turntable just happens to have a very well-calibrated arm. But if it was off by a 0.5 gram in either direction for the anti-skate dial, what it reads, I wouldn't be upset about it. Now, if you have a turntable that you've turned the anti-skate all the way up and you still see that tone arm going toward the middle of the record, you have a defective tone arm and you're not getting enough anti-skate. Either the spring is too weak or it's sprung, broke, something's wrong. And you should get another turntable or have that one repaired. Because playing your records that way, first of all, it's not going to sound great. And the other thing is that you're going to be wearing your styli and your records in a funky way. You're going to end up with a lot of sibilance distortion probably on your right channel because you're not getting good contact. And over time, that's going to become permanent on the record because anytime that the stylus leaves the groove and starts rattling around in there, it damages the groove. So we're trying to avoid that. One more thing before I wrap this video up. There are those that will say that you are adjusting your anti-skate to balance right and left channels. That's not true. Your anti-skate can be way off and your channels can still appear to be somewhat well balanced, okay? That's really not what we're talking about here. It's just the pressure on the groove walls. We're trying to equalize it. So I hope this helps. I want to hear your comments. I want to know if this is something that you've struggled with because apparently a lot of people have. So let me know down there if this helped you. And I really appreciate you watching till the end. We'll do it again soon.